company to come in. Oh, got a recording in progress message. Sorry. It could be used to entice a company to come into Rhode Island. Next slide, please. These are some of the other application-based programs. We have a program that helps companies retain talent by providing an offset to employees who may have student loan. So that's the Wavemaker Fellowship. And the company doesn't really have to do anything aside from inform the employee that this program exists. The employee applies directly to the program. And essentially what it allows for is an offset of the student debt that an employee may be carrying for community college, for graduate college, for a normal 4-year degree. We did just hire a new Wavemaker Fellowship Director, Barry O'Connor, and we're getting the program kicked off within, I think, this month. So it's good to have some new energy to that program. Innovation Vouchers is another one of my favorites. This helps to provide resources for Rhode Island companies to dig into R&D. And this is a very, very popular program amongst, again, multiple industries, multiple size companies. We can essentially fund up to $50,000 worth of R&D related work. If a company is in manufacturing and has the talent within the building to do the work, we can fund the company directly. If the entity needs to work with the college or university to dig deeper into explore other alternative methods of manufacturing a process or improving upon a service, we can fund the entity, the college, and university directly as well. Renewable Energy Fund is a pretty popular one, especially now. That's run by Bill Ash and our group here at Commerce Rhode Island, and it helps to provide grant money to offset the cost of commercial solar installations. Next slide, please. These are some incentives that I think it's important for companies to be aware of, even though they're not application-based. They are sort of by right. So in the legislature, if a company is doing a manufacturing and related improvement, and it's a higher end manufacturer as defined by specific NAIC codes and SIC codes, then they're allowed a 10% investment tax credit. The same with R&D. Rhode Island has a very healthy R&D tax credit compared to other states. So I always like to mention that to companies, if they're doing R&D work, make sure their accountants or their CPA, their accounting departments determine if they're taking full advantage of that. And the no tax on energy is another good by right type incentive. Next slide, please. This is where I'll dig a little deeper into financing. So Commerce Rhode Island has a small business loan fund. It's called SBLF, and it's administered directly by the group here at Commerce. We have underwriters. It's run by Bill Ash in our department, in our group. And essentially, this is money that came in from the federal government, I think back in the 80s, and we used it as a revolving loan fund to help companies with gap financing. It's very, very flexible. We've had countless companies, manufacturing and other industries, take advantage of it. And it allows for a company who may not be fully bankable or may have a bank not completely comfortable with the credit perspective of the entity to come into this fund and essentially get a little more capital from Commerce Rhode Island, or have us underwrite the full loan. We can go from 50,000 upwards of 500,000. The rate, I just checked with Bill, the rate right now is averaging 3%, and it's very flexible money. It's used for working capital, it can be used for equipment acquisition, and we essentially, there's no prepayment penalty. So essentially, companies who need this money can borrow it. If you bring the equipment in, you stop producing the product, and all of a sudden you're doing better than your financial projections had sort of indicated, then you can pay us off with no prepayment penalty. And that's what we like to see, because this is a gap product. It's meant to help an entity become fully bankable. It's meant to even get you to a point where you have enough capital to proceed with your expansion of your project. If the bank is involved, that's even better. We don't compete with the banking community. We try to partner with them. And we've partnered with various programs, and Dan will talk about this, but 7A, 504. Oftentimes you'll find that the bank is involved, SBA may be involved, Commerce Rhode Island can be involved. We can participate in a loan. We can do pari passu where we share the risk. It's very flexible. So I think for the manufacturing community especially, it's important to just be aware of this product. We always welcome discussions regarding a company who may be in need of capital. We want to just make sure that you know what's out there and make sure we all work together to get you the best arrangement possible. PTAC, that's right on the slide, but PTAC is one of our programs. They help companies contract with the federal government. It's a great program run by Melanie Weeks here at Commerce. And if you have a product or service you think has potential to be marketed or sold through the government, state agency, federal, defense sectors, then they can help you analyze that and work through the bidding process. Bond financing is also run by Bill Ash and our group. That's a higher end manufacturing related projects. We can issue tax exempt bonds for those. Upwards of $10 million. We have flexibility with including soft costs and equipment costs and building. We can also issue taxable bonds. So typically a bank is involved in this. The bank will purchase the bond. If it's a tax exempt bond, they will hold the bond and we can issue. The rate would be a little lower than standard because it is tax exempt. Next slide, please. We also work very closely with all of our sister agencies. So, DLT, the Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training, I'm sure many are aware of. We work closely with them as they bring to bear new programs and services. We want to be sure that companies in Rhode Island are aware of these programs and services. And oftentimes we cross-refer different companies that, for instance, if a company is growing, expanding, they need to have higher talent, or maybe they're trying to weather a temporary downturn. We want to make sure Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training is involved because there may be some programs to help companies with those various issues. We also work with DBR very closely, with DEM. And what we try to do here at Commerce is if there's an issue a company's having, we want to be aware of it. We want to make a referral to the appropriate agency if we can, and we want to try to help mitigate any issues a company is having. For instance, I recently got a call from a company that was producing, had an air permit issue. So we were able to talk to the folks at DEM to get them more involved and to help speed up the process, if you will, to help the company continue to produce according to their planned time frame. So it's stuff like that. We just try to help, is advocate on the behalf of the business. Next slide, please. So to what Dan is mentioning before, I can't say enough for our technical assistance providers here in Rhode Island. We, especially during the pandemic, have been blown away by the ability to help small businesses, the resources put forth, SBDC, CWE, Rhode Island SCORE. We rely on these partners to help companies who may have technical assistance needs. Oftentimes we're all involved in trying to help a company that may, if somebody contacts us and they may need financing, perhaps they need to evaluate why they need the money, and perhaps getting a good business plan in place helps them do that. Perhaps using Polaris to help sort of lay out the factory efficiently helps save some time and save some money, and maybe the company doesn't need to borrow as much as they originally anticipated. So we work very well with all of our partners and value their presence here. And quite honestly, the service provided to the business community is invaluable. Next slide, please. Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's it. Thank you.
Dan, before you start, Chris, I have a question related to the R&D tax credit in the capital equipment. Are there certain limitations on what you can apply for related to the R&D tax credit? For example, and Josh, we work with a lot of food companies that are testing and piloting, or I don't know if piloting is the right word, but developing their products from going from a small batch to a large batch, or even how their products are going to evolve. If they're going to, have, I'm thinking of like ice cream, like what flavors of ice cream. Is that considered R&D, or is that just considered part of the production?
I think first of all, it would be based on what the company is doing from a federal tax perspective. So if On the federal tax return, they're categorizing a certain project or dollar amount to R&D.
Okay,
We can apply the state's tax credit to that bucket, and that would be the Rhode Island piece. Another thing to keep in mind with that, these are for C corporations, the R&D tax credit. So if a company is an S corp, LLC, those tax credits may not apply. But we
Okay.
always want to at least make the company aware of it. Suggest the company talk to their accountant or CPA. We try to avoid giving specific tax advice because we don't know the full scope of a business, how it's formed, how they're filing taxes, and a CPA is usually better equipped to dig into that. But typically, in general, if a company is filling out a federal tax return and on that tax return, they're taking an R&D tax credit from the federal standpoint, the Rhode Island piece can be the 22.5% of that.
Okay.
But we can always help you. We've actually had inquiries into the Division of Taxation to help companies clear up some of those things as well. So any company that has a question, we can dig a little deeper with Division of Taxation.
I think the C corporation is gonna, I believe the company I'm working with is an LLC.
Yes, they should
So
be.
that wouldn't be.
Back to the innovation voucher. I'm not sure if they have, but they should consider that if they are doing some R&D related to formulation development or scaling up production to a commercial level. As to, many times, and Josh knows this, we work in Hope in Maine. There may be some companies who are testing the process, making some batch runs. Now, once they start to commercialize it and get it perhaps into a market chain, they need to scale up production. That R&D piece is an excellent use of the innovation voucher at Commerce Rhode Island, because it helps provide resources to use different testing methods to scale up production. And in fact, I think Polaris, you guys were involved in a couple of recent companies with that. So yeah, if it's an LLC, they may want to look at the innovation voucher.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if there aren't any other questions, I have some that I'm going to save for the end. But Dan, we'll have you go ahead.
Thanks. Sure. All right. Well, thanks first of all to Polaris for putting this on. As many of you know, there are manufacturing extension partnerships across the country. Polaris does a great job here in Rhode Island, working with manufacturers to produce, extend, do what they do, and do the research and improve efficiencies on the factory floor and so on and so forth. That it's not done. There's a gap that they fill that's not done throughout the rest of the process. But what Chris alluded to earlier, I mentioned the partners that work directly with SBA on a week-to-week basis, but Polaris is another partner. PTAC, I mean, good gosh, Chris, you can go on a long time about PTAC. The Melody and her team. And PTACs are another thing that are located across the country. But if you have any interest in selling your product or services to the federal government, just contact them. It's a fantastic team there. They do a great job. Anybody who's worked with GSA or any of the other federal agencies that purchase goods or services knows it's a bit of a, jungle. Melanie and her team make it make sense and help people get through that process. All right. On to the topic at hand, SBA's role in financing and what SBA actually does. There's been so much discussion and so much focus over the past 2 years on PPP and the economic injury disaster loan, SBA loans and SBA grants and restaurant revitalization fund, and gosh, the shuttered venue operators grant. God, there's so many acronyms I try not to use. But what we are calling this, some of us are calling this the return to normal SBA lending. And it's tough to refocus and turn this ship immediately in the middle of the ocean, but we're trying to turn it as fast as we can so people understand exactly what SBA's role is in the financing world and what the slide says, the role in the financing gap. What SBA does is we work with banks and credit unions and community development groups, including microlenders, to underwrite, right? This slide, pretty much the Enneagram is pretty simple. You're a business or an entrepreneur, you need capital, you need financing to start your entity. Back one slide, if you don't mind. Thank you. You need financing to start your product or services. The bank or credit union or even the community development group, they're the ones that provide the capital. However, as many of you might know, banks and credit unions, they tend to be a little bit reluctant to provide capital to businesses that have been in business for less than 18 months, especially if you're a startup. And when you do want that capital, then you are reaching the 18 months or whatever the window is that the bank and credit union want. They want 100% equity. They want you to have all that money in your bank account for the amount of money that you want to borrow. For many entrepreneurs, that's a puzzling situation where, well, if I had the money in the bank account, I wouldn't need to borrow the money. Now, let's not talk about leveraging and so on and so forth, but how to bridge that gap. Well, that's what SBA does. SBA provides a guarantee to banks and credit unions and community development groups. That guarantee, 99% of the time, mitigates any loss to the lender. Now, what we also do is we also provide those additional services, and that's where our partners come in. That's where the technical assistance side of SBA comes in, and working with people that consult, such as the SBDC and even the PTAC. They help businesses and entrepreneurs do better, like the MEP does, provide efficiencies in what they're attempting to do. Next slide, please. Now, pretty simply, why would any entrepreneur, any small business want to utilize the SBA loans? It's pretty simple. Like I said, that fourth bullet down, the loan does not have to be 100% collateralized. That's really important to most entrepreneurs and small business owners. It's sometimes as little as 20%. And if you're doing a partnership with Chris's team and getting alternative funding through the small business loan fund or something else, that can even shrink farther. What SBA does with its guarantee, it also provides comfort and mitigates the risk to the lenders. So banks and credit unions, they can extend their credit box. So let's say you're not as creditworthy, you're unbanked, you're maybe unbankable from their terms because you're not able to collateralize the risk, you don't have the existing experience in that industry, so on and so forth. Any one of the issues and reasons that might be tossed out to you from a loan officer, SBA provides a nice, shall we say, security blanket to that. All right. So what that makes it for you, it means the SBA loan system sets in concrete how long the loans have to be. So it can't be a really, really short-term loan with really, really high interest rate, making your monthly payments out of the ballpark so you can't afford to it. So a longer-term loan, even at a rate that's 2% higher than market rate, commercially advertised rate, means lower monthly payments for you. And that means more cash in your pocket. That means more money in your account. That means a better monthly flow. And it means, from the bank's point of view, you'll look healthier as a business. And SBA guaranteed loans, they don't balloon. There's no demand. So that goes through the entire term of the loan. So you sign for, let's say, a 7-year or 10-year or even 25-year loan. That's how long the loan is going to be from your point of view, unless you decide to pay it off early. Bank, credit union, community development group cannot say, gosh, we want it all right now. All right, next slide, please. This is a nice little ideogram that shows in one quick picture the SBA loan programs in normal non-COVID times. All right, the 7A loan is it's a flag for our flagship. That's where the majority of loans from SBA guarantee programs exist with banks and credit unions. You go to a bank, you go to a credit union, and they kind of look at you, what you want to do, and they go, gosh, that doesn't really fit within our normal credit box. Right? And that's a limited amount of flexibility that the loan officer has to be able to make a loan. SBA guarantee extends that, as I said before. The 504 loan, it looks like two people holding up what might be a house. And that's supposed to show that it's a two-part loan package. So it's one loan package for the same amount of money, but it's broken up into two loans. One is through a bank or credit union, a normal loan at a normal rate. And the second part is through a community development group. Community development groups are nonprofit, mission-based lenders. They're not banks, they're not credit unions. You still do your banking, your deposits through your normal financial partner. But the community development group is able to provide 40% of that loan for a much longer window. So a normal loan is 7 to 10 years. A CDC loan, a 504 loan, is up to 25 years. So again, half the debt that you want to take on is going to be on a much longer window, making a much smaller monthly payment. Again, increasing the amount of money in your account per month, increasing your flow, making you look healthier, giving you more flexibility to do with your capital on hand what you need to do on a month-to-month basis. Now, underneath 7A loans, let's go back to that real quick. There's two little sections: community advantage loans and international trade loans. Now, international trade loans, gosh, that's for exporting international trade. I could go on about that for a long time, but I believe that there's an event going on later this month that, Kathy, are you participating or you're co-sponsoring that event?
The export, is that what you?
Correct.
Yes, we are co-sponsoring it.
You're
yes.
co-sponsoring. So what's the date on that? I don't have that right in front of me.
21st, the morning of the
21st.
21st.
There you go. So there'll be a lot more information on exporting and the opportunities on the 21st. So if you are on this list of Polaris MEP, you should be getting information about that. You should participate in that. It's going to be a fantastic deep dive into all the opportunities for international trade and exporting. And then the other section is community advantage loans. Now, and that's going to tie into microloans. See, 7A loans are, shall we say, no, they're for any amount. They go up to $3.75 million. But technically what happens is somewhere around 350,000 below, banks and credit unions will start to look at the loans a little bit more. Gosh, they want to make the loans because they want to help their clients. But if it's a business that's a true startup that has less finance on hand, perhaps doesn't have any assets for equity, they may get even farther into the, shall we say, unbankable or beyond their credit risk box that they traditionally are comfortable with, that even the SBA guarantee isn't sufficient to help them offset. They don't want to tell you no, but they want to help hand you off to an entity that does community advantage loans. There are two in the state. One is Community Investment Corporation, CIC, and one is SEED, Southeastern Economic Development Group. Both are community advantage loans, and they make loans anywhere from $50,000 up to $350,000 for those entities that are even beyond the SBA traditional lending credit window, right? And even beyond that, there are microloans. Microloans are anywhere from $500 to $50,000. These are for true startups, people that don't have any assets, don't have any ability to do any startups, but have a solid business plan in place and are able to put a little bit of skin in the game. And there are, again, the two same microlenders, well, actually three microlenders in the state. There's Community Investment Group, there's SEED, and there's Ascendus. These are great entities that provide microloans. They often partner with Chris's group to, CIC does that quite often, partnership with a little bit of microloan and a little bit of SBLF funds to provide a better package to the entrepreneur, to the startup. And there are a number of, I wish I could start listing them up, but I'm not allowed to, but there are a number of businesses across the state who I'm sure you probably would recognize, and you either enjoy their goods, services, or their restaurants, that are just phenomenal entities that go through the process and receive a lot of technical assistance. So they're not just getting money and being abandoned, they're being helped throughout the process, counseled throughout the life cycle of their business, to the point where they move from a microloan up to a regular bankable credit union loan. I think that's about it. Oh, there you go. One more. All right. Let's go back one, if you don't mind. All right, this recaps basically, again, SBA need to revisit, revise, and reiterate this term. In the past 2 years, again, all those other loans are not an option anymore through the SBA and through the federal government. So SBA does not make direct loans. Again, what we do with our process is we help turn the normal reaction from bank or credit union from a no into a yes, or yeah, we can do that through X, Y, and Z. When you have the slides, this tells you, the numbers down at the bottom tell you basically what the loans can be up to. Going back to what I was saying about the 504 loan being 2 loans, the SBA, the 504, the CDC side of the loan, that's up to 5.5. The private sector loan can be even higher than that. I've seen projects up to 20 million. So if you're starting a new manufacturing business, you're buying your land, you're putting down your building, you're bringing on new heavy equipment, that's a lot of capital to play with to be able to actually turn around and make a new manufacturing process. Next slide.
Well, hold on, Casey, before you go to the next slide, I have a question on this.
Yeah.
Can you clarify for me? All right, you say while the SBA does not make loans directly. So if I'm a small business and I go to a bank and they say, no, you don't have enough credit, collateral, whatever the reason is, I get denied for the loan. If I then go to you, did I damage or
No.
hurt myself by going to the bank first?
No, you have to go to the bank first.
Okay,
And here's why. Because technically, what SBA loans are they're loans for those who are not able to obtain credit through normal, traditional, commercially available lines of credit.
okay,
So you have to be able to not obtain a loan through a regular bank or credit union. If you're a successful manufacturing entity and you've been in business 25 years and you have, millions in revenue and, honestly, millions in the bank for a rainy day fund, you probably don't need an SBA guarantee loan. But that doesn't mean you won't utilize it, because there's sometimes when you start a new line of business or you go beyond what the bank is comfortable with, they do want some additional risk insurance. That's what the SBA loans do.
okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Next slide. And this is, goes back to what your question was.
Okay,
Eligibility for, how do businesses, how do they become eligible for SBA loans? Well, again, you go talk to your bank or credit union, but you have to be an operating business. You can't be a startup that's not even formed to obtain it. But that's it for any loan or any, line of credit. You need to have some sort of operating entity by which can be the borrowing, the legal entity borrowing the funds. You have to be organized for profit. Nonprofits, unfortunately, can't apply for business. We are the Small Business Administration. And again, located in the U.S. and territories and possessions, obvious, we are the U.S. Small Business Administration. Be small as defined by the SBA. Well, it's pretty easy. SBA just resized our standards, but I'm pretty sure unless you consider yourself a large business and you're listed in the Fortune 500, you're not going to be something that you need to worry about SBA being defined as not small. Demonstrate need for desired credit. Well, that's pretty easy. And most importantly, you have to show the ability to repay the debt. This is not a grant. This is not a forgivable loan. Those were during COVID. That's not what the SBA does. That's not an option anymore. Chris might have something, but we don't. Next slide. All right, here's the size standards. It's pretty simple. The tangible net worth of 15 million is yes, and the average income preceding 2 completed years. Actually, this changed. It was announced as of yesterday. It was published on Monday in the Federal Register that it's actually average net income for over the preceding 3 years. So there you go. This is based on the size of the applicant and any affiliates. So if you have multiple small businesses, that can catch up with you. But if the small businesses are incorporated separately, and there's an overarching corporation, it really depends. So it's best to talk to your loan officer at your credit union or bank, and if they have any questions, they can call me. All right.
thank you both. Great information, very applicable. I have some questions, unless we have any from the audience first. Chris, regarding the Wave Maker program, and the STEM, I'm going to assume that manufacturing is considered a STEM industry. So any employees within manufacturing, if they have student loans, could basically be considered for the Wave Maker program?
Yeah, they usually say science, technology, engineering, design, math fields. It's pretty broad description of that, and we've funded employees that's on our website as well. I encourage you to take a look at that, but from a range of entities, from smaller tech companies to I think larger insurance companies. So depending on the exact role, but I haven't seen much of an issue. I mean, I think it is STEM related, so any company that has those types of positions within their entity should be good.
Okay. So I think that that's great, because as we all know, workforce is an issue for manufacturers, and this isn't a recruiting tool. Could be a potential recruiting tool to help offset some of the loans. And then I have a question. I'm going to assume Polaris MEP staff would not be considered.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
That's a good
All right.
question. I'll check.
All right, I have, because I do have a couple people that have,
Yeah, I'll check. That's a great question. I mean,
all right. Yeah, if you could let me
Federal
know.
employees?
Yeah. Yeah, if you could let me know, I would love to let my staff know.
Okay.
Chris, is it something where the person has to be finished the degree, or is it can be, for instance?
No, it can be both. We've had people who are in a program carrying student debt, recently graduated from a program carrying student debt. In the majority of the program, I think focuses on debt within Rhode Island-based colleges and universities, but
Right.
I think there may be some that can go above those parameters. The program has been a little dormant because of COVID and the federal government with the federal
Funding.
loans stopping or putting in sort of forbearance for a while. So I have to check with Barry, who just started, I think, a week ago, to see what the next plan is. But we lost some of our own staff during COVID. I mean, lost them to other jobs, and we had to sort of rehire and get the program up and running again. But I will check on that, Kathy, and see what kind of guidance we have for that.
Thank you. No, I know student loans can be very, very daunting.
Yes.
So I think that that's a great push. That is. So, and then my other question for both of you actually is, I have a couple that apply to both of you. Can you apply for multiple programs, or does it have to be one at a time?
Well, so from our end, it could be multiple programs.
Multiple.
For instance, if somebody is exploring an innovation voucher and they are also considering a small business loan, that's fine. The one, I guess the one caveat would be on the tax credit programs. So there's a clause in the legislature for the qualified jobs in the Rebuild Rhode Island that essentially says it's a but for tax credit, where if a company is planning to expand here in Rhode Island, usually what we want to see and what the tax credit's meant to do is make it more competitive to do that expansion here in Rhode Island. So for instance, if a company is based in East Providence, they're considering an expansion, they're looking potentially at Seekonk, they're looking at staying in East Providence and growing, the analysis would sort of compare those two sites and determine what the gap is, and then that gap can be used can be applied towards this tax credit program. So in that respect, if a company has already started down the path of working with the bank to get financing for an addition, closed on a loan, started to hire, they would not be able to take advantage of the tax credit, which allows them to get an offset for some of the new hires based on the tax credit program, if that makes sense. So
No, it does. You can't double dip into two federal programs.
It's not so much. Yes, it's not so much that double dipping. It's the fact that the tax credit legislation is asking for an analysis on the gap between being in another state versus Rhode Island, and they're trying to make Rhode Island more competitive.
Okay.
So if a company's already working towards an expansion, already hired a contractor, already signed the commercial loan, or already applied for another funding, then the argument from the tax credit perspective is, well, it's going to happen anyway. So the tax credit may not be applicable. That's the only thing that we try to make companies understand, because there is the analysis that the tax credit program looks at. But aside from that, we try to work with companies to sort of navigate the different programs and services. And many times it's a ramp up to different things. Like you may get a loan from us, and then a year later you may get an innovation voucher, or you may get renewable energy. It doesn't stop you from exploring other products.
Dan, the same question for you. Obviously you explain the loans, they can't take out more than one loan based on the areas, but there's several programs that the SBA offers.
Right. What happens is, the answer is there's no restriction.
Okay.
What the SBA does is we work in concert. We underwrite the loan and the risk for the banks and credit unions. You're not going to be able to pull a fast one on a bank or credit union or the state and say, gosh, I'm going to take out a loan from this bank. I'm going to take a loan out from this CD, this community development group. I'm going to take a loan out from that credit union, and I'm going to get a loan from the state. There are multiple reasons that multiple reasons and multiple checks and balances which don't let that occur. Primarily the UCC, things that happen at the state, loans are registered at the state, liens are registered at the state level that prevent that from happening. However, what I would say is when you're working with your bank or credit union loan officer, if you're lucky enough to also be working with, let's say, a score counselor or an SBDC counselor, what they're going to do is they're going to say, gosh, there are ways not to try and do separate loans, but actually to do multiple loans and stack them,
Okay.
right? And why and how it's more advantageous. That's kind of like what Chris was saying about how when you want to take advantage of tax laws, tax credits, you should talk to a CPA. This is an opportunity where you want to take advantage of the ability to stack loans and products and services that are available through the state and or federal programs. You need to work with a counselor who's able to sit there, know the programs, and go, gosh, this little square peg works here, this little round peg works there, and this is how it works best to make your complete puzzle. The example I used earlier was, CIC and CEED are really good at working with the state and localities. So if there's any credits available, if there are any grants that happen at any time, they're able to utilize those, leverage those, and you're always going to be small, $5,000 or less. But what can happen is, again, that's free money, but then they'll get a microloan and or a loan through the SBLF or some other matching funds that occur. Or if they're a little bit larger, what they can do is they can use a 7A loan and a 504 loan. So use a 504 loan program, shall we say, buy the land, build the building, or the building included some heavy equipment. Then you use a 7A loan for, let's say, revitalization, remodeling, and buying products to make your, to buy products to make your product or to create your service. So raw ingredients, if it happens to be a food manufacturing item of that sort. There's lots of opportunities and lots of different ways to create, shall we say, your outlook. And like I said, to finish your puzzle. Again, it works best if you're working directly with a SBC or a score counselor. They've done this for decades. I think we are really great people. And again, most of those services are available free for the borrower, but free for the small business owner. Chris's office, Rhode Island Commerce, and SBA both work to pay for all that counseling. When businesses don't use it, it's kind of disappointing. I mean, that's what MEP does. You work really closely to provide efficiencies. And if people they know about it, but they don't know how to, just ask, hey, how do we do this? Can you help us? If not you, then who would you recommend? All of us work in this environment where we work to help entrepreneurs and small business owners. What's always disappointing to me and whenever I talk to my colleagues at the state and local level, gosh, is when a small business doesn't take advantage of it. They don't just go, gosh, I know there's all these different entities that are supposed to help, but I don't know who to ask. And they get tunnel vision. They focus on doing what they do and don't stop and go, can anybody help me do this more efficiently? And that's what we're here to do.
So when would a company call Commerce versus the SBA or a bank? Like when would you, or just if they're considering anything, any type of expansion, any type of loan, and Dan, to your point, they may not even know that a loan is available. So if they're considering an expansion, a new product, is that when they would reach out to Commerce or the SBA, or do they just go directly to a bank? And
I'll jump in. I encourage companies to contact us as often and as for any reason at all. So, our role is, the way I envision what we do here is we want to work with any Rhode Island company, any startup, any company that has any issue, whether growing, expanding, contracting, and it can happen concurrently. So if a company, and I often talk to companies who may be looking to expand, they've talked to their bank, they're exploring SBA. So I guess it depends on, what makes sense for the individual entity, but I would encourage them to call us as soon as possible, because even if it's not financing specifically that we help them with, there may be some tax credit programs, or there may be other incentives that maybe the innovation voucher may be pertinent as they expand and work on bringing new equipment in, and they have to test it out to improve upon a product that they're manufacturing. So I don't want to say call us right away for every single thing, but essentially call us as often as you'd like, and we're happy to try to help you. Like, I love knowing what companies in Rhode Island are doing. If we can help, I want to help. Like I said early on, we don't compete with anybody, so we just want what's best for the company, and we'll gladly, if the bank is the best scenario, to what Dan was saying, if a company is really well positioned credit-wise with their existing bank, we always tell companies, talk to your bank first, see what they can do. In many cases, the bank will know right away what their appetite is, and then if they say, "Hey, I can lend you 300,000," and the company is expecting 500,000, maybe there's something else we can do to partner together to provide the resources the company may need. So, long answer to call us as often as you need. We're always happy to talk to you.
So, and I would hope that, I'm going to do a selfish plug here for Polaris MEP. If they're a manufacturer and they're looking for services, that you refer them to us too. So,
yeah, and that's I'm glad you said that, Kathy, because that really is the way it works. So
Good.
We are as strong as our partners, and when we talk to, we can't do. I mean, obviously, the side of commerce. We can't do everything for everyone, but what we try to do is provide a good resource to help with the question or the issue or to provide the solution. So it may be making a referral to Polaris. It may be reaching out to DLT. It may be talking to SBDC. Whatever it is, we want to be sure that we're at least making that connection, trying to shepherd the request through the process, and then follow up. So we seek to develop relationships, keep in touch with businesses. And many times when we're out there, reaching out to companies, trying to get in to see different managers and owners, will bring to bear everything that we do, including all of our partners. So I often, my pitch is not just on what Commerce does, it's what the partners do as well, because I think it's important for companies to at least hear that in case something happens down the road where they do need to do an expansion and they want to look at lean related principles, and they should know that Polaris is right here in Providence and actually resides with Commerce folks right at the building. So for me, that's the easy job, is telling them about our partners and what they do as well.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We do the same here. And the programs that Commerce has available for the state of Rhode Island, I think, are just phenomenal. For one of the smallest states, or the smallest state in the United States, I think they have the most. I work with all the other MEP centers across the country, and when I tell them some of the services that Commerce offers for the businesses, it's a business friendly state in the sense of the services that is available. I have one other question. I learned something new today, a couple of programs that I wasn't aware of at Commerce. I also had attended a governor's roundtable a couple of weeks ago and learned about another program there. So Commerce is constantly evolving and adding programs and meeting the needs of the business community in Rhode Island. How does someone get on a mailing list or some kind of, so then they know what is coming out that may be applicable to them?
That's a great question. There are, on our website, commerceri.com, there's at the bottom of the page, you can do a couple of things. You can request to talk to somebody at Commerce through our business assistance form.
Okay.
You can click on another section that allows you to be added to the mailing list. And between that and our interactions with staff internally, we use Salesforce, and we will provide the listing of all the email addresses that with companies with which we've contacted to our marketing team. And when they blast out a newsletter, it goes to that group as well. So there's a couple of different ways. I mean, if you're talking to someone at Commerce, there's a good chance that that information is being logged, and we can include that. Unless you opt out, we can include you on a list of outreach for newsletters and information. Otherwise, you can go to the website. You can check information on the website, or you can ask to be added to our mailing list from the website.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, I have about any last minute. Please forward point of contact info of presenters. Yes, we will make sure that we do that so that you have the point of contacts. Dan and Chris, any last comments before we wrap up?
Just like to join Chris. The SBA, whether nationally or here in Rhode Island, have email lists as well. You can visit our website, sba.gov/RI, and down at the bottom, sign up whether you want to use Twitter, LinkedIn, email, Facebook, whatever you need to do, whatever platform you like to get your updates on. We provide those updates that way.
Okay. Chris,
Yeah,
any final wrap up?
No, I'd like to thank you, Kathy and Polaris, for inviting us to present. And like I said, I look forward to speaking with any Rhode Island company. So feel free. You'll have my information, I assume, soon. Feel free to drop an email. I'm happy to call, visit, whatever works for you. But I love to learn about Rhode Island companies, and I love to see how we can help with the programs and services of Commerce and its partners. So thank you again.
Chris and Dan, thank you both very much. Greatly appreciate your time and all of the information that you have shared with us today. And we will be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.